It's one of the first times I like was introduced to tarot.
Mhm.
There's tarot and oracle, and they're like, if you want a positive outcome, read your oracle.
Yeah.
If you want the cards to tell you what it is, read tarot, whether it's positive or negative. And so that's why I like sometimes when you read tarot, you're like, I'm so sorry.
We're on this learning journey just like many of you might be. Think of us as your curious companions as we stumble, learn, and hopefully gain some genuine insights.
So if you're curious about your birth chart, wondering what the tarot card really means, or just looking for some relatable company on your spiritual learning path, then Stars and Shuffles is for you. Get ready to explore the universe within and around us. Well, are we ready to talk about our Taurus?
Yes,
rising?
so we ended up pulling Taurus as our second one, Taurus risings. So we're looking at Lunar Eclipse in Virgo. Where is that impacting? That's going to be their 5th house, house of pleasure, romance, creativity, and believe it or not, children. Oh, so you're gonna have to. I say that because it always just like the 5th house in general, it always kind of throws me off a bit because it goes with, obviously like pleasure and creativity. I could see that connection. Romance, you're like, okay, I could see that, like passion. You want to have passion in your partner. And then there's children that get thrown in there, and I'm like, okay, interesting mix for that house, but that is that house.
Yeah.
So with the lunar eclipse in your 5th house, you are going to be letting go of something related to, it could be you're not finding pleasure in certain hobbies anymore. You're not, the way in which you are channeling your creative outlets may not be feeling the same for you. It could also be, with your romantic partner, you're letting go of, not saying like it could be your partner yourself, but maybe the way in which you're showing up in that relationship. There may be some habits that are preventing you from like, fully connecting with your partner. It could also be that you're letting go of some dynamics that you have with your children. You may want to be, you really got to like self-reflect and think about your behaviors and habits when it comes to these relationship dynamics. And I always encourage looking inward because that's always, an indicator for me, at least. It's not always just the other person, which, at times, yeah, like their actions have like it's clear that, if they're ghosting you, they're ghosting you. If they're not trying to, work with you, if they're not trying to do that, it's obvious that it's them. But also like look at, yourself and how you're behaving, and with that mix, right, of not only looking at what they're doing but look at what you're doing as well. You're letting go of something that's getting in the way of, achieving that relationship that you want to have with your spouse or romantic partner or child, or trying to achieve that passion you're looking for, in a certain, hobby. It may be, or a creative outlet.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So this pool first, Taurus are going to go through some shit.
Man, well, sorry, Taurus already.
Because we pulled the 9 of Swords reverse, which is already like there's so much emotion in this card because it's 9 swords. There's a person in bed crying.
Okay, so
like
lunar eclipse is definitely bringing something that's going to happen where you're gonna have to let go of some emotions,
but it is
grief.
reversed too.
Oh,
so when we look at it reverse, what it means is you're still dealing with anxiety of some sort, but it's probably unwarranted anxiety. So you're probably overthinking something and you have created an anxiety for yourself a little bit. And so especially when you start talking about like those relationships and like, maybe we are so in our head and we are projecting what we think is happening on somebody right now. And so it's unwarranted anxiety. So whether it's your children, your relationship, your spouse. So when we look at like the relationships where you're at right now, because you said the 5th house. And then we look at the 9 of Swords in reverse. So regardless, the 9 of Swords, you're getting some kind of anxiety. Like you're getting, you're frustrated, you're overwhelmed, maybe. But it's probably a little bit self-induced versus
okay. So that looking inward is resonating with this card.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It's like it only gets worse. No, I know that. But we do we are gonna move when we get to this skills there. We have
so I guess so let me then push back, right? So lunar eclipse, we're letting go of obviously some self-induced behaviors. With the solar eclipse, it is in our 11th house for our Taurus rising. Sorry, I said R, not Taurus rising, but in your 11th house, you are going to see some new opportunities. And this is community, this is friends, this is good fortune. The solar eclipse is bringing events and situations for abundance in this realm. And so what with that, it could be that you're letting that go in order to find a new community that you want to get involved with. You may come across people who are eventually going to become good friends, like friend potential, and just good fortune, just good stuff coming, in terms of that. It may be that I would say it's more so with community, having that good support system. It's coming your way with solar eclipse, and you have to let go of some of those self-inducing behaviors in order to invite that in with solar eclipse.
I'm like, you want to skip our solar eclipse?
So what and that's just like a gist of it. I would say let's see what our tarot is saying, because there may be some more insight into that.
So I'm so sorry, Taurus. It was just not like they're gonna go through very emotional September.
Okay.
Because our next card was the Moon, which is all about kind of mystery, shadow, fear. And when we have it reversed, the biggest thing we're looking at is maybe we're shying away from ourselves a little bit. And maybe we're coming into some kind of confrontation.
Interesting. Okay.
And we look at like the Moon in general, there's just a lot of mystery around it. There's going to be high emotion, but you will have some intuitive feelings and stuff too. Since it's reversed though, that's where we come into like, hey, it's probably going to be a little bit more high emotions, a little bit more confrontation is what it's bringing in from the solar, which makes sense of us leaving a lunar eclipse potentially with our 9 of Swords reverse, saying, hey, we've kind of created these ideas of something that's giving us anxiety that maybe isn't warranted. And then we have our Moon reversed, saying, hey, we're probably still going to be in some high emotion. There's going to be some conflict.
I mean, it may be right, because the intention is to get to a place where you do have just, you feeling like you have a good community system around you. And so it may be that you need to have that conflict. You need to have that talk in order to establish that, closer bond with whatever individuals are within your, community, your friend circle, and that kind of, support system realm. I would say obviously don't try to go and create conflict, but I think that conflict is sometimes necessary, right? Because you're dealing with human beings who have their own minds, their own thoughts, and it's not until you actually butt heads and are forced to have that conversation that you could hopefully move forward and create a deeper connection from it.
Hopefully. And so this is one of the first times I was introduced to tarot. There's tarot and oracle, and they're like, if you want a positive outcome, read your oracle. If you want the cards to tell you what it is, read tarot. whether
Yeah.
it's positive or negative. And so that's why, like, sometimes when you read tarot, you're like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And so, like, as you're talking, like, I know you're talking like the really positive side of it, but when we even get to like, hey, what skills do we need to prepare for it? We got the
Yeah.
7 of Swords, and like the imagery on this card is always, it's funny because when you see it like on the internet and things like that, you're like, haha, that's not my life. But then we pull it and you're like,
Yeah. So I guess I'm not familiar with,
okay.
7 of Swords.
Mhm.
Could you like walk us through what exactly does that mean in terms of
Yeah.
what skills are you going to need during this time?
Yeah. So breaking down just what the card looks like. So right now we have a man who has 5 swords and he is running away. However, he is
Mm.
leaving 2 swords behind because he's got enough. He's taken what he needs. And so in the background of this one, there is like a group of people, like a little village, and he's kind of looking back at the town, making sure they don't see him run away. And
Mhm.
so when we look at the 7 of Swords, it is very much about deceit and dishonesty. It could be
Whoa.
thievery and
Yeah.
things like that. And so when we talk and like they all really go in line together, we talk about the 7 of Swords and like, hey, what is that skill you need? Right now, you need to look at the people and the things and what is deceiving you, what
Mm.
dishonesty is happening,
Okay.
which it makes sense. Like the beginning in our lunar eclipse, we are very much like something feels off, but maybe it's unwarranted.
Yeah.
And then we get to our moon and there's still that mystery, maybe a conflict is happening.
Yeah.
And so now you're really like, you need to learn how to decipher what is the truth and what is not in
Gotcha.
this time. And so, and if it's with friends or if it's with family, if it's with, a love and things like that, that is what you're going through right
Yeah.
now. And that's what the skills you need. You need to clearly understand the two.
Yeah.
Because even in our lunar eclipse, we are potentially making something up that we're not seeing.
Yeah.
And so we need the skill to differentiate and discern what is reality and
And
what
what
is
is it?
not.
Okay.
And then we get to our solar eclipse where
Yeah.
we still get a moon where in the solar, you're like, oh, it's in which house is it?
It's the solar eclipse is in the 11th house.
The 11th house with friends, and you said, right?
Community, yeah,
Community.
friends and community.
But the solar eclipse could bring conflict for you, or
Yeah.
mystery or confrontation. And so again, that skill you need is to discern what is actually happening, what is
Yeah.
not, who is being dishonest, so that you can kind of avoid that potential conflict and maybe avoid that anxiety. So if you
Yeah.
can come into September with a skill of discernment of those
Yeah.
things, I think that will serve you well. Otherwise, unfortunately, the tarot for Taurus risings just isn't as kind as our Sag one.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think with, any sort of activity and disruption with, the just 11th house of friendships, community, and then just 5th house when there's, your romantic interest involved and children. It's always kind of a little scary, right? Because you're going to see activity at that. But I would say, right, if there is, a friend that you're not sure of, and you mentioned avoid conflict.
Mhm.
I guess if it's something that you could walk away from where you don't really need to have that conversation,
Mhm.
go for it. Because, it could also be that conflict, it could also just be having a conversation.
Mhm.
If that person, for some reason, is not, receptive to having a uh, mature, conversation. And what I mean by mature is, emotionally mature
Mhm.
in that sense, and they just go crazy on you, then that's your sign right there, right? That
Mhm.
I shouldn't really continue this conversation. I shouldn't really be exhausting myself,
Mhm.
because this person is showing me that they're not willing to uh, open up the dialogue with me and try to work with me and problem solve so that we can repair our, friendship, and create some sustainability in it,
Yeah.
right?
And I think being in our 5th house and our 11th house, there's going to be crossover
Mm-hmm.
because family, lovers, all those things could also be part of your community and your
Yeah.
friendship. And so I think that's where Taurus is going to probably find like some, how do we separate those maybe a little bit more
Yeah.
too, so we can understand like who plays what role
Yeah.
essentially in our circles and
Yes.
where do we want them a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and that's really what the 7 of Swords is telling you, like, hey, the skill you need right now is to understand kind of these
Yeah.
things. So,
Kind of be more,
mhm,
aware, it sounds like
mhm,
start paying attention more.
yeah.
Um, it sounds like to just what people are seeing, what people are doing, the ones that are surrounding you and in especially those that are within your close circle. I'm
Mhm,
not saying like be untrusting of them and, be very paranoid,
mhm,
but just, have some awareness and
mhm.
alertness, of noticing things, not necessarily drive you mad, but just to think about a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, like, especially when we talk, like, the moon, the mystery, all
Yeah.
those things, remember, every single person in your community is a different rising.
Yep.
They're all dealing with something right now too,
Yeah.
which is where that conflict can come
Yeah.
definitely from. It's every person right now or every,
Yeah. I
that
mean,
solar eclipse is affecting us all differently.
yeah, it all comes with, there's that connection of empathy too, right? It
Mhm,
may be that you're letting go of some tough stuff with, your romantic partner or your child or or you're trying to change your dynamic with them and show up with them more and, build that relationship that you're not able to um, show up for that friend that's wanting,
mhm,
your attention and kind of exhausting your energy. And if they're not being understanding, um, that's not really a friend that you need
mhm,
when you make room for someone to come in who is more understanding of, man, you're going through some, pretty tough stuff right now.
mhm.
Let me know how I can help.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's our Taurus.
That was our astrology and tarot reading for Taurus rising
Yep.
for September, especially more specifically focused on the impacts of the lunar and solar eclipse.
Yep. So week 2 and week 4,
Yep.
kind of understanding those months. So you're probably listening to this in the middle of a lunar eclipse was happening. So I hope this helps you.